At 4 o'clock in the morning British time, we did see the start of a 60-day ceasefire between Israeli forces in southern Lebanon and Hezbollah, the largely terrorist organisation that has pretty much taken over military control of Lebanon. Let's talk about this with Andrew Fawkes. He's Defence Middle East expert and research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. Good morning to you, Andrew.
Hello, Julia.
Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I mean, so first of all, is this ceasefire a good deal for Israel? Because although they have done incredible work, basically, I mean, really damaging Hezbollah forces, have they actually done enough in terms of damaging Hezbollah forces that Hezbollah is no longer a threat to them?
Well, we'll know if the ceasefire holds, because on paper it seems like an excellent deal for the Israelis. If we look at their war aim, the whole reason they went to fight against Hezbollah in Lebanon, it was to enable northern Israelis to move home from where they've been displaced since October the 8th last year. And that threat took two forms. First of all, it took the form of rockets. And then secondly, it took the form of Hezbollah attack tunnels on the border from which they could launch another 7th of October style attack. Yeah. Israel has degraded Hezbollah's rocket stocks by about 80%. So we're down from 130 to 150,000 to just 20% of that total left, which is still a lot, but it is a huge reduction. And the tunnles have been destroyed en masse. And we saw yesterday.
And these tunnels were on the same scale as we've seen in Gaza, aren't they? These are
vastly more. Yeah. No, vastly more. I was inside one about 4 weeks ago. I was 50 metres underneath Lebanon. They were incredible. They were dug into solid chalk, 900 metres long, the one that I went to. Fully electric. It had lights, it had aircon, it had fire suppression systems, and it also had an insane amount of ammunition. And the idea was Hezbollah fighters would go there from all over the country in civilian clothing, get changed into their uniforms, pick up their weapons, and launch downhill 500 to 900 metres into Israel and start doing what Hamas did on the 7th of October. So yeah. Far more difficult to destroy and far more difficult to build, which is why when they're destroyed, it's a great thing for Israel because it's not a capability Hezbollah can get back anytime soon.
OK, so, I mean, and Hezbollah would have been happy to sign this deal because they have been pretty much obliterated. The leader after leader after leader assassinated, a huge number of their higher echelons of their commanders killed or severely injured in those magnificently brilliant exploding pager attacks, and then the radios after that. Were they willing to come to the table?
We're led to believe so. And, you know, we're in hot take space here because we haven't seen the firm details of the agreement. Yeah. But Hezbollah have certainly had an absolute battering for 3 months, and it's going to take them a very long time to recover from this. Now, will they try to? Of course they will, and Iran will want them to recover as well. Iran are probably hugely in favour of the ceasefire as well. Hezbollah were the jewel in the crown of their proxy strategy, and the last thing they want is to see them degraded beyond any future use. So the task for the Israelis now is going to be stopping resupply from Syria, stopping resupply through Beirut by sea, and trying to prevent Hezbollah getting back to where they were before this war.
Yeah, I mean, this thing, Israel, you know, battling on all fronts. Of course, not having to be fighting that war in southern Lebanon frees up more resources for dealing with events in Gaza. What chance does this mean that there may be a greater chance for ceasefire in Gaza with Hamas? Or is that a completely different kettle of fish?
No, I'm quite positive about this. And I don't think you can look at any one front in this war in isolation from the other 6 or 7. I think you have to always consider the second order effects of what actions in one front means in another. And what this means for Gaza is that Hamas are now very, very isolated. The Qataris have kicked out their leadership to Turkey. Their allies in Hezbollah have stopped firing. Iran seemed deterred from the last Israeli missile attack. And their mission to try and hammer Israel on all these different fronts is now looking as if it's been a failure. And so it all depends now on whether Hamas decide to keep trying to degrade Israel internationally by sacrificing Gazans to the maximum extent for the next few months, or whether actually they look at this now and say, look, we've been beaten as well.
I mean, has Donald Trump's election been a game changer in this? Because he's been so clear that there's one side in this war that he supports and only one, and it's Israel. His pick for Secretary of State Marco Rubio has made that very clear and is fully behind the efforts of the Israelis to completely and utterly destroy Hamas and pummel them into the ground. And says that it's very clear every single Palestinian death in Gaza is absolutely to be held. That is the Hamas's fault, not Israel. Israel. Does the arrival of Donald Trump in the White House, does that just mean that, frankly, the game has changed?
I mean, potentially, but I'm slightly sceptical, particularly when it comes to the Lebanon deal. I think that's mainly because the IDF have had a massive and stunning victory in the sense that they've achieved all of their war aims.
Yeah.
They've hammered the leadership, they've nailed the rockets, and they've destroyed all the infrastructure in the south. They reached the Litani River yesterday. So when it comes to Trump, I think he might have an impact on Gaza, especially when Hamas see that there's no chance of any pressure on the White House whatsoever whilst Mr. Trump and his allies are,
yeah, absolutely,
in the presidency.
It's going to be fascinating to watch over the next few months, see what happens. Andrew Fox, always good to see you. He's from the Henry Jackson Society. Thank you for that. Benedict Spencer, I know you keep a very close breast on Middle East affairs. Do you think there's any hope of a ceasefire in Gaza?
I think it's going to be a lot harder to achieve simply because they're a lot more intransigent in Hamas.
I mean, their entire raison d'etre is to destroy Israel and kill every Jew.
This was always existential for them. They were gambling on other people being drawn in and backing them. And to be honest, as much as Hezbollah did sort of fire a lot of rockets at Israel and cause a lot of damage, it never, I think, wanted this war. Certainly not on the terms that it was dragged into it. So no, I don't think that there is going to be a ceasefire. And I also suspect a lot of people in the international community who are sort of sotto voce behind the scenes have said to Israel, get this done so that we don't have to deal with this again before we then go into rebuilding.
It is absolutely fascinating how many of them, Arab leaders actually behind the scenes are very much behind what Israel is doing indeed. Thank you very much for that.